Hi, and welcome to the Red Tunic Podcast, a podcast where I look to rediscover what makes gaming fun and enjoyable by having positive conversations with those related to the industry. My name is Link, and today I'm joined by Dana Nightingale, who's contributed to the Dishonored series as a level designer, and most recently as a campaign designer on Deathloop, and now a campaign director at Arkane Studios Lyon. Hi, Dana, how are you doing today?
I'm doing rather well. It's good to be here.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. And again, thank you so much for making the time to have this conversation with me. I really appreciate it, especially with, as I said, Arcane Studios Line. You are in France, so there is a
Yes.
significant time zone difference there. So thank you for making time taking time out of your evening to talk with me.
No problem at all. It's good to be here. I like doing these.
I'm happy to hear that, and as I sometimes say to people, I hope I am not the person that makes you not enjoy doing these things. So, Dana, just before we get started, if you don't
Mhm.
mind maybe telling everyone a little bit about yourself, who you are, what they should know.
Well, I spent most of my career as a level designer, as you just already said. That's really what got me into like being interested in working in video games, was having an interest in level design and level creation. Of course, that was back in like the 90s, in the early 2000s, where a level designer was also doing the art for the levels, which is absolutely no longer the case in a AAA studio. But turns out there's people who are much better at that than me, so it's absolutely not a problem. I well, gosh, I grew up in Florida. I moved to France, to Lyon, when Arkane hired me. I started off in the Austin studio. At first, I worked there for a couple of months, but really wanted a new experience. So Arkane was good enough to say, "Okay, yeah, sure, you can try the Lyon studio, see how it suits you." And it suited me very well. So I stayed there, and I just celebrated my 12-year anniversary of working at Arkane, and it will be my 12-year anniversary of moving to France in another couple of months. So, yeah, apparently it worked out pretty well for me. What else would you like to know?
Well, there's a lot we can talk about.
Mhm.
First, though, I do want to say congratulations on 12 years
Thank you.
for being at Arcane Lion, or just Arcane in general, really, as well as congratulations for escaping Florida. I,
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, it is especially not a great place for transgender people right now. So my heart goes out to everyone who's still stuck there. I voted. Good luck. We'll try to make a better life for everyone. We'll see. We'll see how it goes.
yeah, and just not to dismiss what you said, but Florida's never. Got to be careful how I say this, only because my father listens to this, and my father moved to Florida. Um,
Uh,
but I'm sorry, Dad. Florida sucks. We've had this conversation. Um, um,
Florida has many wonderful attributes. The natural beauty of Florida is undisputed. I will give it that.
but the crazy people and such is the real detriment to it.
Well,
Um,
yeah, sure. Crazy people can ruin just about anywhere.
yes, exactly. Um, but so sorry. One of the things that before we started recording, you had also mentioned maybe talking about this, and I do kind of want to ask about this because this is something that I don't fully grasp, and I imagine there's other people that also don't. But you had said when I was introducing you to be explicit on Arcane Studios Lion versus Arcane Studios Austin, can you maybe, even if it's just an easy answer that I should know, but I'm just an idiot. Can you speak to the importance of being explicit in that difference? I hope that's the right way to phrase that question.
Yeah, it's two different studios with the same like founding like parental figures, for lack of a better term. But it's two studios that work together on Dishonored. But that's really the only time aside from occasionally sharing some of our very talented people as needed, that the two studios have worked together. So Lyon is the original that was founded in 1999. Just like I think like 4 or 5 people creating Ars Fatalis, and then Arkane Austin. I don't have an exact date for when that started up, but for years it was very small. It was it was incredibly useful to gain. I hate to use the word legitimacy, but it was a different time back then. Like a little European studio, a little European indie studio might not have been given the same respect or like the time of day as one who has an Austin, Texas street address. So that really helped in those early days to if if you like I work at Arcane, here's my card, and you had a Austin, Texas address, like that is one of the like big hubs for the type of games we make. This is where Richard Garriott and Origin Systems were based. This is where one of the Ion Storm studios was based, Warren Spector studio, um, where they made Deus Ex. So like when you say, okay, Arkane Austin now within the industry, that's sending a much clearer message of what the studio is and what it's about than if it's this city in France that, I'm sorry, most people mispronounce. It's Lyon. Um, sorry about that. Um, which of course most people haven't heard of. Uh, so over time, the the Austin studio grew. We built Dishonored together, and then afterwards, the two studios were like, okay, let's do our own projects now. We're two full mature studios. So Arkane Austin went on to make Prey, and now they're working on Redfall, and Leon has done Dishonored 2 and Deathloop.
So thank you so much for explaining that. That makes a lot more sense and makes in my head, and I assume, or I'd hope, presume even for other people to also hear that and be like, oh, okay, this is exactly like it makes it easier. So thank you for that because I
Yes.
before didn't really grasp that,
Mhm.
just because in my mind I was thinking of it as more of a um, kind of like a saddle, like two offices are part of the same thing. And I was hearing when I would hear like Lyon Studios versus Austin, I would think of it more as a just trying to indicate what group of people were speaking, kind of, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I understand.
So thank you for that. That helps a lot, and I hope that helps anyone else who is also ever
Mhm.
confused about it, as well as anyone else who is curious about how to properly pronounce Leon is, not as lion.
Thank
Um,
you. Thank you. It's better than when someone says lions with an S at the end. That is just the worst. Please never do that. There's no S.
and I personally should know better, seeing as I am French Canadian. I should at least make an attempt to say French words properly. Um, So, shame on me for that one. So thank you. I will do my best to remember how to pronounce that in the future.
Thank you.
So, Dana, you kind of touched on part of my next question, how you got into developing or making games, where you talked about being a level designer for the most and
Mhm.
also kind of doing the art. I did read somewhere as well that you had, I don't know if this was you were doing fan levels or officially, um, but you also worked on thief levels. Um, would
Yes.
you mind to speak to uh, maybe elaborate a little, I guess, or what have you, on how it is you got into developing and making games?
Well, I actually, excuse me, this is all very fresh in my mind because one of the more recent, like live in-person talks that I did was telling the story of how I got into the games industry. So, I just recently spent a couple of weeks mapping that out in detail. But to cut to the chase, Like looking back on the games that I would play when I was really young, very often what would crop up in the list of what I'm spending all my time on are games that let you make the game. So this goes back to the Atari 800, where there's this game called Adventure Creator, which I believe was named to make people think about the original Adventure, which was like had predated it by several years. Not made by the same people, but this let you make dungeons in the same style as the original Atari Adventure. So like I'm 4 years old and I'm like making dungeon maps and so forth in this Atari game. And then uh, excuse me, in the years around, gosh, the early 90s, after I've already completely fallen in love with a pair of games called Ultima Underworld, I my family and I stumbled upon this game that lets you create your own Dungeons and Dragons adventures on computer. Like, okay, now I'm making my own D&D campaigns in a video game. This is fantastic, and this is something that would happen over and over, where like there's amazing games. I'm enraptured by the experience. I'm playing it for 20 to 80 hours, depending on how complex the game is. But then I go right back to the games where you can create your own scenarios. And finally, like System Shock comes out. And there's no level editor for System Shock, for the original System Shock that comes out in 1994. So I'm like in my class, ignoring my teacher's lecture. It's Florida schools, so I wasn't missing anything important. Um, like drawing new maps for System Shock on graph paper, just day in and day out. I redesigned Citadel Station over and over and over in my class book notes. I was just fascinated with the idea of like building new environments for these games that I loved. So when Thief comes out, and I've gotten together with a bunch of other really cool and talented people, and we put together this community called Through the Looking Glass. And one of them, his name was Tony Holming, was like, "We're going to convince Looking Glass Studios to release their level editor for Thief." Okay, that sounds incredible. I don't believe it'll ever happen, but let's give it a shot. And we did it. We actually convinced them to release their level editor. So that was it for the next I want to say like decade. I was working on maps for Thief in my spare time while trying to get a master's degree in architecture. Whenever chance I would get, I would work on my Thief maps, and I'm doing this with a big team of people. Like it ranged from like 20 people collaborating together on one project. Sorry, I just hit my mic there. I hope that doesn't sound too bad in the recording. To like, okay, I'm going to work with like it was always a team effort. This wasn't a solo hobby. Um, so yeah, I knew that this felt right. I knew that this like captivated my imagination since I was very young. So when I graduated from architecture school, just in time for the massive global recession in 2008, I already had my plan B worked out of like, well, there's no work in architecture because the housing bubble has burst. What if I made video games?
So, thank you for sharing that, and that's absolutely. Uh, I, I don't think hilarious is the right word. I'm just gonna go with wild, but that's absolutely wild that you and a group decided that you wanted to make levels for Thief, and to do so needed to. I'm just gonna say it the way that I think it comes off as you harassed the studio until they gave you the level
We
editors.
we made a petition, and I think it had like 500 signatures. Huge, huge, 500 signatures. It was incredible.
You know,
I don't I don't think they needed much arm ringing. I think they were more than happy to acquiesce in this case.
yeah, I was gonna say I think the fact that they had 500 was enough. They went, oh screw it. There's some people that want it. Let's go.
Yeah. Yeah.
But no, thank you for sharing that because that's really interesting, and obviously, that that with your architect degree, master's, sorry, in it, um, mixed with your already experience designing levels and such, those I've spoken to a few people where they kind of have a similar um, background in architecture in
Yeah.
some way, shape, or form. So it's amusing how well that those overlap, and as they should, right? Because you're making buildings. It's just in this
Yes.
scenario, you are not constrained by the physics of the world for how things need to work, right?
I always want to tell people that architecture and level design overlap, but probably not in the ways most people think. Architecture is one small aspect of dozens of professions that need to come together in perfect harmony to create a building. And architecture is just one slice of that. And that's level design. You have to collaborate with this big, big team of talents. And even if it's a small team, it's a lot of people with a lot of different talents and expertise to bring all this stuff together. And the level designer is often at the center of that. And that's the same case with the architecture. And it's even more true now that level designers really aren't designing the art of the game. That's true for architecture too. The architect isn't designing the way the building looks; they're designing the way it's structured, the way it, like the global form of it, the way the inhabitants of the building move through the space, how they orient themselves, and that's level design work. Meanwhile, the interior designers and all of the various craftspeople that are responsible for so much of how a building comes together, they're the ones who are deciding how the building looks. Um, and it's really exactly that in level design.
So yeah, again, thank you for elaborating on that. And it what you said makes perfect sense. And speaking, well, wow, bad. I'm just gonna sorry. I was gearing up to do a what I would hope would be a good segue, but it was going to be horrible. Um, so I'll just go to this. Based on those experiences and what the overlaps that you've noticed and such, do you have any words of wisdom that you could share from everything you've learned?
Um, if what you're doing is something that you truly care about, no one can really take that away from you. And unfortunately, I feel like that's something people need to hear because it's so hard to get a job in this industry, and it's so easy to take it personally when you're being rejected. And there's no just like a magic advice anyone could ever give you of how to get in, except just absolutely love what you're doing. Um, don't focus on the joy of the work. And of course, that is like kind of hollow and useless advice when you like need the income to survive and you just need to find a job. So it's tricky in that way. But don't become discouraged if you've gotten your 50th rejection or your 50th time where they're like, yes, we're interested in your profile, and you never hear back from them. um, just keep going. Love what you're doing. If you're in it for the love of what you're doing, you can keep going.
Thank you very much for that. I've just recently spoke to someone else, and they kind of had a similar kind of advice, and it's good to hear that because I imagine, like you said, well, I imagine you went through this as well. I imagine many others have, but it is incredibly discouraging to be told no or to
Yeah.
maybe make it halfway through the process or
And
have
you
everything
just never hear back sometimes.
exactly. Yeah, so I think that's fantastic words of wisdom to just keep in mind that love what you're doing and that you're doing it because it's what you enjoy and what you want to do, right?
Yeah. I wish that could always be enough, but of course our harsh reality isn't so kind. But there I try to offer the encouragement that I can.
Yeah, and I agree, the harsh realities of everything, make it difficult, but persevering and hoping, or uh, yeah, yeah. Sorry, I don't know where to go with that. I'm worried I'm going to go down a dark place. But no, thank you for that advice. That is fantastic advice and something to always keep in mind when you're trying your best to get to
Mm.
break into any industry, especially this one.
I
So
hope it's what some people need to hear.
yes, hopefully, because I imagine there could be some people who are on the, I don't want to say the edge because that has weird implications. But there are some people that are like, just incredibly stressed out with the whole process, and just
Yes.
knowing that as long as you love what you're doing, and that gives them enough courage or strength or what have you, energy is the better word, to keep going, and then
They're all
hopefully.
three good words.
And yes, and then hopefully find the final one, that the final application they have to submit or what have you, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
So, Dana, you kind of touched on the level design aspect of things, but currently, well, previously, you were a campaign designer for Deathloop, and now you are a campaign
Yes.
director. Can you
Yes.
maybe speak to that? Because I did look into it a little bit,
Yeah.
and one of what I read, and by all means, correct me if I'm wrong, but I read that it was kind of like the intersection between level design and narrative design. And some people, like myself, might struggle at narrative design because it is in itself kind of a vague concept. Um,
Yes.
so,
I will come at you with an even vaguer concept, which is the key to what campaign design is that it is fundamentally a user experience design role, which is even harder to define, and more people don't know what that means.
so that makes it way easier for someone like me.
Hmm,
Um, not that I'm
fantastic.
saying I have a UI or UX role,
Yes.
but that was
Definitely
something
not
that.
definitely not UI. It's
Mhm.
much more in the UX camp, the user experience design camp.
Yes, but well, yes, in my case, I was, because usually the two go hand in hand, in
Hmm.
terms of other applications. For
Yes.
me personally, a previous job I had, I took it upon myself to be the UI UX person,
Hmm.
with no design experience whatsoever. It was a very foolish task on my part. But for me, that makes it a little easier to understand. However, I imagine for other people, not the case at all. Um, but
No, definitely not.
but would you mind speaking to what a campaign director or campaign designer kind of does in, if possible, not vague terms or notions?
I will try to be specific as possible. Though, if you haven't played our games, you still might be a little lost. My main job, like when I started doing the campaign design of Deathloop, my main job was, and I'm taking over from, like I'm picking up where my predecessor left off. There was a campaign designer before me who was honestly, he's the person who hired me to work on at Arkane, Christophe Carrier. He was the his title was actually campaign director at the time. So like I'm still too junior to get the director title, so I'm campaign designer. And the work on Deathloop was the crafting of the high level connective tissue behind everything the player does in this game that's working towards the end goal. And this isn't the kind of game where you play mission 1, mission 2, mission 3, mission 4, etc., etc., credits roll. This is a nonlinear game. This is with many interlocking parts. This is actually deceptively nonlinear because even though so much content is presented as being like a linear sequence, you can actually do it in any order, and the game tries so hard to respect that. But I am now trying to craft this experience of the player has to understand what they need to do. They have to understand what's keeping them from doing that. They have to understand how to overcome that obstacle that's keeping them from doing that. And then they have to have the satisfaction of, now I have done that, and this is the outcome that feels like it was worth it to go all through that stuff to get here. In the case of Deathloop, that's the murder puzzle. That's I have to kill these 8 characters within our abstracted 24 hours, which in the gameplay terms was these 4 time periods of morning through evening. On the face of it, it looks like you can only kill maximum 4. How do you kill all 8? Well, the campaign was all about the player solving that problem. So where the UX design came in, and this was the surprising part of the job, was I spent probably a year working on and iterating on and redeveloping the first maybe 2 hours of the game, because if the player can't understand like how this game is meant to be, all the rest doesn't matter. So in the first 2 hours, we have to create, I understand the problem, I understand the obstacle, I understand the solution, and now the next 12 hours or however long it takes to complete the game is about that last thing. And you have to achieve all of that within the first like 2 hours of the game, otherwise you've lost the player. So it's like 90% of the work is on the first 2 hours of the game in this case. So that was the campaign design work on Deathloop. In the earlier games, like the work done by my predecessor would be, like for example, I was the level designer of the Clockwork Mansion, Dishonored 2. But the Clockwork Mansion wasn't my idea. This was the genesis of this, and missions like Crack in the Slab, the time travel mission, come from the campaign director. That's Christophe Carrier. He's the one who's like, okay, these are the missions that I want in the game. And so like the assignment comes down to the level designer. We want the home of a clockwork inventor, and we want this home to be dynamic somehow. Maybe like some secret passages, maybe some some shifting floors and so forth. And then I take that and I run with it. So now I am in the role that Christophe had on Dishonored 2, working on future games in Arkane Lyon.
So thank you for explaining that. And, I don't mean this in any negative way. And I only preface with that just because of, what's the word? Um, just because of what I'm going to say could be seen as such,
Okay.
depending on who's listening. But when I started playing Deathloop, excuse me for 1 second, I'm sorry. Sorry about that. My throat was being weird. Usually I could power through it, but that time it was immediately shutting me down. When I started getting far enough in Deathloop where I was able to pull up the kind of like the timeline map, I guess you would say, where it's like, oh, this happened here and all that.
Yes.
It immediately reminded me of Japanese visual novel games that have branching paths.
Mm-hmm.
And that, when I saw that, I was really excited because that is a concept that's not really used outside of those visual novels where there's multiple endings and the intention is for you to, go and do X and then Y, but now this time do A
Yeah.
instead of what have you, what have you. And
Mhm.
I thought that was really interesting. And, from what you were saying now and, when I saw it then, I also assumed, and it seems like I was correct, that that would be a massive headache to try and set that up to one, not only make sense, but to also how you can learn what your actions do to tie everything together. And, I really thought that was great. And, I haven't beaten Deathloop. I got pretty far in it. And then for me, the Christmas holidays ended and immediately everything else in my life stole attention from me again. And I just unfortunately never got back to it.
Well,
But
now is the perfect time because we just released a really good update for it. So give it another
exactly, I was gonna mention that,
go.
you guys released a new update, and that's, I have a perfect excuse now to get back into it. But, just like the way the mechanics worked, I couldn't fathom, I can't still can't in reality fathom the amount of energy it would take. So congratulations to you and everyone else who's contributed to that,
Thank
uh,
you.
to make that work. Just because it's and now I'm sure there's far more balls in the juggling mess to keep it all up in the air, but I imagine that would be a very hard thing to juggle. So, congratulations on that. And
Thank you.
I think it's fantastic. I was, enamored with the whole thing is what I'm trying to get to, I guess.
I'm trying to figure out the part of that I could have taken badly.
Well, it wasn't more for you. It was more for the prefacing of, because some people, and I'm not saying this with any kind of disdain or what have you,
Mm,
but some people, they'll look at like a visual novel game and be like, oh,
yeah.
that's garbage or whatever, right? Um, so the
Okay.
preface was more just, I didn't want to have any kind of negativity or what have
I
you
see. I
in
see.
the comparison.
I see. Okay.
That I do that too much, and I try and mitigate before things, but yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
um, so Dana, I want to kind of take it back a little. Now, you did touch on some of the games, so I imagine this might be an easy question to answer or something that you can kind of
Hmm.
hand wave. And feel free to, if that's what you want to, the route you want to go with it. But what was your favorite game as a child, or favorite games, and what about them made you enjoy them? Now, I have a feeling you're gonna, the answer to what made you enjoy them might be related to, the adventure aspect, the mapping or what have
Yeah.
you. But by all means, correct me if I'm wrong, or feel free to elaborate as much or little as you need to.
The game that changed, like, playing games on the computer to from something that was just like something you do for a couple of hours before the afternoon cartoons come on, to something that was in itself like your goal for the day was, I need to do all my chores, I need to do my homework because then I go get to do this. It was Ultima Underworld. And that game blew my mind because I had never played a game that presented an environment that felt like an actual place that was inhabited by actual characters, with gameplay that felt like what I'm doing in this world matters. And was just I was just swept away. And it was filled with it did something a little more than just all that I described. And this is something that I feel like I know that other games had done this. Of course, like we're not playing every single game under the sun, so I don't know how much this was common. But like, this is the game where the monsters are people, and you find these enemies and you're fighting them, but eventually you find like their settlement, you find their home, and you realize you can talk with them, you realize you can understand them, you can build relationships with them, you can do more than just fight. And there's this whole sequence, maybe I don't know, like 5 or 6 hours into the game, where you meet this race of what looks like monsters, and you have to learn their language, and you have to like come to an understanding with them, and it was not like anything I had ever played before, and it felt like this is absolutely worth my time. This isn't just something that you kill a couple of hours before dinner with. This is like, like, this is important to me. This is something I'm dreaming about. Um, and that kind of changed everything. It 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 positioned this medium as something that was as important as anything else. And like the rest is history, I think.
So, a few things. Thank you for one, because I think you have, the way you phrased the way you answered that question, as a game that changed from a time waster to, this is my goal. Um, Thank you, because I think I'm going to steal that as how I
Okay.
phrase this question, because it seems to encapsulate what I was aiming for far better than my question actually did. So thank you for that. That's
You're welcome.
fantastic.
I'm helping.
Um, but and I find it very interesting that the because Ultima Underworld, from what you were saying, a lived-in game, how that basically led to, you playing or not playing, well, playing, and then also other games you played, but level design for Thief, which also is
Yeah.
something that arguably is one of the first immersive sims. I shouldn't say arguably, it's not an argument, but
Yeah.
but it was, a lived-in world, and then
I
you
just want to
work.
say very fast for the people who are sneaking into my mentions right now. Yes, I know Ultima 6 did all this before Ultima Unrolled, but I wouldn't play Ultima 6 for another couple of years after that. So yes, mad respect for Ultima 6. Fantastic game. Ultima Underworld was my first experience of this. Sorry, I'll let you get back to what you're saying.
No worries. But no, it shouldn't be shocking to me that, well, it actually isn't. So sorry, it isn't very shocking to me that, you went from a game that presented a lived-in world, so to say, to Thief, to immersive sims, to working on immersive sims and having games that very much feel lived in and everything. So, the dots are well connected there, I think, is where I'm really trying to go. So thank you.
Yeah. Oh, my pleasure.
So, Dana, you did, and I would love to keep talking about Ultima. Unfortunately, I'm not actually that well versed in the Ultima universe of things.
It's quite all right. Quite all right. It was a different epoch.
um, it's for me personally. It's just weirdly it's went under my radar the whole time,
Mm.
and I can't explain why. I've watched videos on it, and some of the Ultima series games are absolutely wild from the
Mhm.
story of them. Um, Bridging on nonsensical if I understand things correctly. Um, but actually, I do kind of want to ask about this, and just because um, it ties into immersive sims and everything else. I am curious, so just on the topic of like something like Ultima Underworld or what have you, um,
Yeah.
when you look at, and this doesn't necessarily mean for, for things like Dishonored or Deathloop or what have you, but when you look at games that are trying to present itself with a lived-in world, is there like an immediate kind of, um, I don't want to say a red flag because that's a negative term.
Ha.
Is there like a star, a shining star hovering over, I guess, the thing
Yeah.
that you look at and you go, that right there, that's what
Yes.
seals the deal for me.
There's this word that our new story director, well, new, they've been with us for a couple of years now. Like they taught me this word. So thank you, Alex. It's I'm gonna pronounce this wrong. It's vermislitude. That's the key. That's it's all of this useless waste of time stuff that's driving the producers crazy of like, no, I'm gonna add all of this stuff. It's this signs of life, like the signifiers that this space is inhabited. It's all the little details. That's the shining star, as you said. Like if you enter into a space and everything's clean, like everything is in its proper place. There's no sign that anyone has ever actually been here. That's where something is missing. But the contrary to that is that's what gets you there. That's like I the first thing I thought of was just the and this game came out quite a while now. And it was kind of like it got a lot of attention when it came out. It's God, I hope I don't get the name wrong. It's been so long. Gone Home, where you're just exploring this house, but this house feels real because they put so much care into making this feel like a place where people actually lived. And they just went beyond what was actually necessary to convey this. They added details that had just like they weren't necessarily important to the player's experience, but they're there and everything kind of stitches together. And it's totally credible. And that's what seals the experience. And that is I'm not saying that everyone at Arkane has played that game and use it as an inspiration, but when I look at the games that we've made, and of course this is work done by the artists, like completely independent for me. I'm not asking them to do this is of their own volition. They're doing that exact same thing. They know because like they probably have the same gameplay experiences as I have, that this is what makes it special. If you just like add all these extra little details that don't need to be there, but when taken as a whole, it makes the place feel like there's like, it's the verisimilitude. That's what it is. It's the science of life. Hope all that like congeals into an answer that makes sense to somebody.
Thank you, and that makes perfect sense what you said. And I ages ago, and I'm gonna just say that this ruined games for me in general. I'm not gonna lie, but kind of what you said, I think adds into on a macro level versus the micro level. I guess for what you were saying, it sounds more like um, it would be something. Well, for the Gone Home example, that would be like a micro
Yeah.
example for like in a house or room to
Mhm.
room. Um, but I watched a video essay talking about and it was the difference between like Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas. And
Yeah.
it was similar to what you were saying, was all the minutia of things that show that like it's actually lived in, of things that contribute. And the one
Mm.
that absolutely ruined me was
Uh-huh.
how are people eating? And it was
Mm.
like the comparison for Fallout 3 to New Vegas, where New Vegas has people growing crops and all of this all over the place. They have a
You're
whole
talking
farm.
about H Bomber Guy's video, aren't you?
It might very well be. It's been several years, but
Yeah, he did a fantastic video about Fallout New Vegas. We're still referencing his video about Fallout New Vegas, though. Actually, that's how good it was.
but if I'm gonna presume it's the same person, seeing as that
Yes.
sounded familiar to, but it absolutely ruined any open world game for me.
Hmm.
Um, that it goes to the extent where immediately when I'm like exploring, and it's not just like for a Fallout game, just any open world,
Yeah.
I immediately go, well, how are these people eating? And I hate it because it's kind of like one of those things where when you when you notice the weird paint splotch or the uneven
Yeah.
paint on the wall, then now you're just staring at it, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
Um, but no, thank you for explaining. I'm not gonna try and pronounce that word. It's it's in my head.
Mislitude? I'm
Yes.
sure I'm pronouncing it wrong. They're going to talk to me tomorrow and be like, Dana, you're saying the word wrong. It's pronounced like this. Like, okay, Alex, thank you.
But the vermithitude, sure.
Vermislitude. I
But thank you for that because that makes sense. I like the approach for that one and how that works because it just makes
mm,
sense. Um, so Dana, one of the things that before we started recording you had mentioned was, sorry, I'm trying to. I wrote down how to go into this, and as I said, I'm gonna bumble it up, and I am. Um, so I'm just gonna read what I wrote and say screw it.
huh?
You had previously mentioned that you have had some trouble getting to JRPGs, but that you've
Oh,
actually just found of one that broke you into the genre.
yeah.
Would you mind sharing what game that is, or then we'll go from there about it, I
Oh,
guess.
I'm afraid this is apologies to all JRPG players for this next segment. Um, I decided to give Octopath Traveler a shot. It was on Game Pass, and of course, like we're all on Game Pass now. We're part of the big happy Xbox family. So I gave it a shot. I'm like, actually, you know what this game reminds me of? And apologies to all JRPG fans. This reminds me of playing XCOM because every single like move you make, every turn you take, it sounds like I'm about to start a song. Um, like that determines if you're going to get out of this alive. Like it's hard, but also the tactics always feel meaningful. Like you've got such a big menu of choices of like, okay, it's your turn. You got all these options. Most of them are going to result in your death. What do you do next? And you just got to like look at the situation, and sometimes you're guessing. Sometimes you're like, okay, that's the answer. And when you've like started to master the systems, like I'm like 50 hours into this game now. It's like, yeah, the JRPGs are like 800 hours long, but I'm 50 hours in, and like I've got it down. I know, like I have got this combination of moves, and sometimes it's like, okay, I know what I want to do. It's going to take me 6 turns to get there, but this is going to win the battle. And you just work it out moment by moment. And there's setbacks. Like, okay, this enemy has this move you didn't anticipate. Okay, whatever, we can counter it with this. Okay, this character has this ability, I can counter it with that. This and this happens. And it's actually a lot of fun, and it reminds me of playing XCOM. Like, I don't mean the like OG XCOM. God, is OG a thing people say anymore? Like, that's from the 90s. I'm sorry. Like the original I don't even know what it means. It's the original XCOM, not the original XCOM, but like the ones that like Enemy Unknown and
Fire
XCOM
Axis.
2. Yeah, yes, exactly. Those are the XCOM games I've played. But like in those games, every single turn, you know, like the choice I make during this turn is going to determine if I win this match or not. And like the end point is still like, 2 hours away maybe, because these are long sessions. And like, I get it. This is fun. Maybe I'll try out some other JRPGs, but this was the first one that finally clicked for me. And we'll see. I've been having fun.
And that's fantastic to hear. I've for a myriad of reasons. Um, because I've been playing JRPGs on and off my entire life.
Yeah.
I started with like Chrono Trigger or whatever I could get my hands on
Yeah.
via an emulator. I'm not gonna lie, it was the late '90s, early 2000s, whatever. I was young.
Yeah. You do what you
Um,
can.
yeah, exactly. I wasn't going out. I didn't have a job. I wasn't gonna drop like $80 on a brand new game if I ain't got that money. Um, anyway, sorry. Um, but I'm always happy to hear when people find a game that kind of lets them into the genre, or I shouldn't say lets them
Yeah.
in, but is the thing that brings them into the genre. Um,
Mm.
and Octopath Traveler is an interesting one. I haven't played it, but I'm kind of aware of it and like the approach it takes in that it's, a call home to the older JRPG styles
Yeah,
from the
that was
SNES
my
era.
understanding. Yeah. Mm.
So
So it helps that it's beautiful. It's such a beautiful game. That absolutely helps with me.
yeah, they've Square did a fantastic, or Squaresoft or Square Enix. Wow,
Mm.
went way too far back there. Square Enix did a fantastic job at making it represent, the era that they were hoping to capture
Mm.
back with. Um, and I like that the way that you kind of um the thing that pulled you in was the combat style being like you having to think about it and not just be um, you know, press X to attack
Yeah.
or basic or simplified or what have you,
Mhm.
right?
Those moments where like the weakest attack you can possibly do is actually the one that wins you the fight. Like that just crazy concept and getting your head around it. Like, no, I'm not gonna make my wizard cast this massive spell. I'm gonna make her hit this guy 6 times with her staff. And that's what breaks his guard so that my next character can deliver this massive blow that normally would do no damage, but because their guard is broken, now this can happen. Like that kind of stuff is what clicks for me.
Yeah, and like I said, I haven't played it, but from what you said, I think I need to. Just because it sounds like there's a lot of interesting systems in play that
Yeah.
have a lot of ebb and flow to actually give you reason to put energy into what you're going to do or what your next setup is. Um, so yeah, I don't know if this is like the buttoning interest or what have you for you getting into more, but if it is, I hope that you enjoy what else you get into trying or have the courage to try.
Yeah,
Um,
we'll see.
yeah. But no, that's great, and I am curious, and I do have to ask this now,
Mhm.
because I honestly thought there was gonna be, you were going towards, oh, you've now had the chance to play Persona 5. This question isn't about Persona. It was just I thought that's where it was going to go because uh, Persona 5 is, well, Persona always seems to bring in new people. Anyway,
Mhm.
um, was there a notable game that you tried for JRPGs before and it like was almost there for you but just didn't do it?
No, I can't say that there was. Pretty much all of them were just like, I'm giving this a try. I don't think this is for me. I think the longest one, like the time I stuck through it the longest was only because I was dating somebody who was really into this game. So it's like, okay, I'm gonna give it the benefit of the doubt for you. But no, there isn't anyone in second place in this category. I'm sorry.
I'm not gonna lie, that makes it even better, only
Mm,
because that just sets how high of a bar. Well, actually, no, that's not probably not even
yeah,
better. That's kind of terrifying that this game has that like that's the
yeah.
gap between your you can't like
And maybe I should clarify for the listeners, like Dark Souls, absolutely love it. I've played every single one of them. To me, that's not a JRPG. Nier Automata, fantastic game, not a JRPG. Um, the Zelda games, Breath of the Wild, loved it, not a JRPG. I'm talking about the ones where it's like the turn-based combat and you have a party and it's like 600 hours long, those types of games. That's what I mean by JRPG.
yes, yeah, yeah, and I wish you the best for the future for JRPGs, just because I'm worried that you won't find a comparable experience. But at the same time, it sounds like that might not be a huge concern to you. So, you know.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Thank you.
Um, now I would be remiss if I didn't
Mm.
throw this out there, and I do apologize if it's one of those things you're like, yeah, whatever, I don't care. Um, but if you liked the tactics style, like the having to think
Mm.
out your attack style. If you haven't tried the Bravely Default series,
Hmm.
um, it might scratch a similar itch. The art style is not the same, so if the art style
I
wasn't something that pulled you in, then you know it's not gonna do it.
I see. Yeah.
But it's a game that kind of
Hmm.
relies a fair bit on tactics and all that. But you know, I
Yeah.
just wanted to throw that one out there because there isn't a lot of JRPGs that I've played that actively put hard
Yes.
tactics on you. Know, like you said, smacking the guy with your weakest attack 6 times, so that way the next one is set up to actually do a lot of damage.
I think what I really need is the next game from Firaxis.
Which I think will be very interesting. The a lighter version of XCOM, even
Hmm.
though I don't think they want it being compared to XCOM for obvious reasons.
Yes.
Um, but hopefully that'll be an interesting go because
Hmm.
I really enjoyed XCOM myself. The newer ones, it was always terrifying when your guy decided he at that moment, like when like your max level vet decided that was the moment PTSD needed to set in, and he
Mm.
decided the way to express himself was to use the rocket launcher on your group of two other guys before you actually go into the field. And then, the death spiral at that point, because you just lost three people, and then, the fourth is going to be gone soon, and then they were your
Yeah.
best, and now you can't recover. It was a fantastic, fantastic game. I
Yes.
say that it sounds negative, but that death
Well, it
spiral.
gave you a tremendous story that you can tell. Like this is what happened to me in XCOM.
It's even worse when it's just like a normal gray that scared them though.
Yes.
It's like, dude,
Oh,
you
we've all had that experience. Like everyone who's played those games for enough time has all had those experiences.
yeah, and it's like, dude, come on, you've killed at least
Mhm.
80 of these guys in your whole campaign. What's wrong with you? It's just go slap them. You're big enough now.
Yeah.
Um, sorry. Anyway,
Yes.
now Dana, I am curious.
Him.
Outside of like making games or playing games, do you have any other hobbies, and what are they?
It's been very hard to have hobbies lately. Um, it feels like in the last year, what has become my hobby is the convention tour, which is kind of like in the past year, I've made I think 6 convention appearances, and it kind of takes over your life. Like to be clear, I loved it, which is the reason why I did so many. Um, and it was First of all, I most of them were with a talk I did about Deathloop. And it ranged from 60 minutes to 40 minutes, depending on the venue, which was me like going into detail, telling the story of us, redesigning as much as we could of Deathloop in response to our user research. But this is all like work too. So like I'm going to these conferences and it's travel. So on the one hand, it's like, yeah, my hobby is travel, but I'm traveling for these conferences. And on the other hand, no, but it's work because I'm there to talk about my job, and I'm there representing Arkane, and I'm there with various people from the publisher and our PR and community teams. Like I feel like I kind of like don't have a hobby anymore because it's like it's not just, yes, it's sure it's just 6 times in the past year, but that takes up so much energy. It's like I don't have any, like I'm preparing for it, I do it, and then I'm just tired. um Yeah, yeah. I don't. I feel like I don't have a satisfying answer for that. When I'm not overly exhausted from doing that kind of thing, I have this vague memory from maybe another lifetime when I would like take my bicycle out every morning and cycle for 20 kilometers. That's the thing I used to love doing. Wow, how long has it been since I've done that? Yeah. It's kind of hard to have hobbies and have free times when you're like, doing the whole convention tour thing. So that's been my 2022.
Well, hopefully, well, you said you enjoy it, so this is a
Mm.
weird kind of statement to make, but hopefully for 2023 you can maybe find some balance to be able to get back out on your bike but still
I'm
have energy to do the tour.
Yeah, I'm not planning on going to any conferences in 2023. We'll see what actually happens, but I'm not going to make a talk. I'm not going to have like prepare a presentation. Like it's back to working on what's next, and maybe find some time to, I don't know, do stuff away from a desk or a podium. Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah, I can't say that I would love that because, for me, I'm always at a desk, but I can understand how some people don't
Yeah.
want to sit all the time or what have you, right?
I did get back into modding from like 2019, 2018, 2020, I think. I made a bunch of Skyrim mods. That was fantastic. I was suddenly doing work in game dev that had nothing to do with my normal job. Work I had never done before in some cases. Like I've never done any programming. Now I'm making Skyrim mods and I'm learning how to program. I'm like doing UV mapping on art. That's not something I ever do in my normal job. And it's great, but it's also like a second job because I spend my work hours doing game dev, and then I spend my leisure hours also doing game dev. Like, is that smart? Is that good for my body? Is that good for my mind? Shouldn't I be doing something else? I don't know. It's addictive.
Y- I can't speak much to that because I don't know if I'm in the minority or majority when it comes to people that do programming,
Mm.
but I personally want like nothing to do with programming once my day's over. I don't want to think about it. I don't want to touch it. I don't,
Yeah.
I kind of like to, the laptop is closed and oh, that part of me is dead now. So I can't speak to if it's good or not, but I think maybe the best way to
Mm.
look at it, and only you can answer this for yourself really, is um if it oh Christ, I'm Mary Kondoing it. If it brings you joy, then I guess it's not a bad thing.
I derive a lot of satisfaction from solving problems and programming. Like I'm making a Skyrim mod. If I'm programming, it's because I have to solve a problem. I want the mod to be able to do this. I can't make it do this unless I write some code. So it's always about just, I'm trying to solve this specific problem. I want my mod to do this. You go in there and you write some code and it's fun. And maybe it takes a couple of weeks for it to work, and then you release it and everyone was reporting bugs, and you're like, "Wow, I guess it's actually a piece of junk." But you at least you felt satisfied in the moment.
You know, I I understand what you were saying, and I can also agree or relate to that. That
Yeah.
the dopamine hit you get from solving a clearly defined problem.
Yeah.
Because like myself, I have a design degree and a programming degree,
Hmm.
and one of the things I didn't like about design was I never got that dopamine hit because
Oh.
the problem, despite being like despite the let's say like a poster requirements or whatever being clearly defined, it didn't feel solved in the same way as when you're
Yeah.
working on something that you want. If you want to make your the Skyrim Dragonborn, whatever they're called, sorry, I can't remember the proper name. But if you want to
Dovahkiin.
Dovahkiin, if you want to make him jump 50 feet and
Yeah.
you solve that with whatever the code is necessary to do it, it's a very clear, oh, he's now jumping 50 feet, I have succeeded, right? So like the dopamine hits are very, well, for me, were very easy with programming because it's like, oh, it did the thing I wanted to, pat on the back, I feel good.
Except in my case, it's I'm designing a mod about checking out books from a library, and the problem is I want to be able to change it from book to books and have that be grammatically correct in all contexts. So I'm trying to write the code for that, and that's my big programming challenge. Is I want it to be grammatically correct in all contexts. Of like, no, I've checked out one book, I've checked out two books.
I I don't, I wish I could give some direction on
I
that.
solved it. I solved it.
Well, congratulations, I'm happy for
Thank you.
you.
Thank you.
Um, Only because on the topic of modding like Skyrim
Mhm.
stuff, I'll share this real quick before moving on. Um, I have very little experience with modding. It was Oblivion, and I got the bright idea to try and
Um,
mod in a thing from an anime series called Claymore. Um,
yeah.
but effectively the bad guys, I guess you would say, they're they eat people, they look like people, but they would transform into monsters and get high strength and everything.
Mhm.
I was like, oh, I'm gonna implement something like that. It would be a fun thing to try and do in Oblivion. Except I didn't know what I was doing at the time, and I probably still wouldn't, to be honest. But the enemies, the moment they saw something to fight, they would pop all of their like stat boosts and then the whatever to transform or what have you. I don't remember if I got that far, but they would pop all their boosts, and then you'd be watching, just a normal villager or bandit slamming a fox across or a wolf across the map, and then they see you and, smack you. And I immediately went, well, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm done, and just stopped
Oh,
trying to do it altogether.
oh no!
I
Don't give
got
up.
immediate I got immediately overwhelmed by the enemy overwhelming me. I was like, nope, this is going nowhere.
It is not easy work.
Especially when you're just pushing buttons and hoping stuff works, right? But anyway, Dana,
Mhm.
I don't want to take up too much more of your time. It's your evening. I want to let you be able to enjoy it and relax. Um, However,
Mhm.
if there was anything else that you wanted to discuss, a cool game. Well, you already kind of talked about the cool game that you were enjoying, or maybe
Yeah.
something else you're doing, or something you feel more people should be aware of, or if you wanted to talk about another one of the questions that was up there, by all means, the
Oh
floor is
wow.
yours. Um,
You had put into your list like the hardest question anyone has ever asked. What makes games enjoyable to you is, I swear, the most difficult question you can ever ask a game developer.
I'm not gonna lie,
And I
that one.
thought about
Oh,
this question for so long.
well, you know, if you've thought about it and you
Yeah.
feel comfortable answering it, I
Mhm.
don't want to take that mental energy and have it go to waste. So if you would like to tell me what it is that makes games enjoyable to you, by all means, let's do that so it's not wasted energy.
I don't think it's possible to answer this without getting into trouble. To
Oh
me,
no.
to me, it's about, do I feel like I am really an active participant in this scenario? is the game just giving me what it wants to give me, or is this a collaborative effort? Is the game developer saying, I want the player to be part of this experience, or is the game developer saying, I want the player to be my audience? And I feel like I'm like casting shade on those types of game devs. I'm just saying this is for me. There, like if your experience of playing games is absolutely fulfilled and you have a blast with the latter of just like I'm here, I'm along for the ride. I am not saying that that's not legitimate. I'm just talking about my own experiences playing games. Like I want this to be a dialogue between me and the game's creator. You're giving me this, I'm giving this back to you. And this can take a broad variety of forms because in many cases it's like, okay, your game is a sandbox. This is fully player driven what's happening. The dev is giving you tools, you're choosing how to interpret these tools and what to do with them. And the opposite end of the spectrum, which is like this is purely a test of your mind and your skills, and everything is locked in. The game can only be played this exact way, but it's still a challenge. And I think that can also still be really satisfying because in that case, like your participation in it is like I have to work this out. Like I love point and click adventures. These are games with like one design solution, one design story. There's occasionally choices to make. In many of them, there's branching, but it's a very curated experience. But I'm still enjoying those because my participation in them is I'm stuck and I'm trying to work out how to solve this problem, and I'm seeing if the game is going to give me what I need to be able to work it out. Um, and like maybe the games Arkane makes is somewhere in the middle of those, where it's like a lot of sandboxy stuff, but also a lot of very bespoke authored content of like this is the game's story, this is the outcome, and you're along for the ride. The moments where I'm really not having fun is when I feel like this game doesn't really care if I'm playing it or not because this game exists complete and whole without my experience at all. Like my experience doesn't matter for this game to exist. And those are the times that I'm really not having any fun. And it's kind of hard to like I don't want to say that those games are like designed wrong or badly. It's just where I'm no longer feeling totally engaged if I'm like all I'm doing is very surface level participation in this event, but really the game is just going to do its own thing, and I'm just not really interested anymore. So that's where I am in terms of having fun versus not having fun in a game. I hope that makes sense.
It it does. It makes perfect sense. And I from both sides, basically everything you said I can agree with to some extent. And let me rephrase that. To some extent, I can see myself in those answers, is how I should have phrased that, because I'm not looking to disagree with anything you said. It's they're all valid and it all makes sense. Um, but I'm not I'm not gonna lie. The whole time that you were talking, everything in my brain was just screaming, was just flashing immersive sim. Um,
Like,
I
clearly, this is the where I've meant to be making games.
exactly, I mean that as a compliment, obviously, because you're working with well, we're working
Mm,
with a company that is making immersive sims.
mm,
Um, so it's I'm I'm happy that you were in a place where
mhm.
it sounds like an you can make a I'm struggling with the right way to say this without it sounding wrong. Um, you can make a positive impact because, clearly what you like about enjoying, like what you enjoy about games is something that you can impart on the future of whatever Arcane Leon does. And previously as well with whatever, like, with level design, I am presuming you would have had that same kind of methodology in your head, whether it was making you the thief maps that you were working on or the Dishonored maps, which, like, uh, let's be honest, is kind of just a spiritual successor to Thief. Um, depending on who you ask. Some people might argue that, or what
It's
have you.
it's I think it's equal parts spiritual successor to Deus Ex and Thief, but the debate rages on.
um, but just everything you said, and I,
Mhm.
like I said, I mean this as a compliment. It sounds like you are in a fantastic place where you can have an impact and share your influence of those things, of those topics, into the a future of hopefully what is more immersive Sims. Um, and I say that just because, and I've had this conversation a few times, and if you'll permit it, I kind of want to touch on it. If you have the time, if you don't, by all means, I will let you go.
Oh, go right ahead.
Um, but I'm curious now because immersive sims, as you know,
Mhm.
firsthand, that they are not easy games to work on. They're not simple, straightforward things. Like
Yes.
as you learned with Deathloop, that those are, trying to get, which is, its own brand of what have you. It can get real complex real fast.
Yes.
And I'm curious, and if you haven't, because you just haven't had the time, like, whatever, a valid answer is about, like, no matter what you say, it's a valid answer. Is what I want to say there. I don't want you to feel you need to stretch,
Okay.
but um, when it comes to like the indie scene
Mhm.
now starting to work on immersive sims as well, um, and today I think it just came out that a new Deus Ex is in the very early stages, which
Mm.
is fantastic. Um, but I think the question that I'm, not getting to, that I'm going to now, is the future of immersive sims. How do you, in your mind, how is the outlook for that? And I'm sorry if that question is like way too vague for you to actually answer, and I'm sorry.
I feel like the outlook is incredibly bright. I put together, I was a GDC advisor this year, and I put together a panel hosted by Harvey Smith, and I reached out to many teams who are working on indie immersive sim games right now. And we managed to get on this panel a developer working on Skin Deep, which is an immersive sim from the creators of Quadrilateral Cowboy. Um, Also, a level designer who's now at Arkane, but who started out as a level designer on. I feel like I'm going to pronounce this correctly. A lot of these games have very interesting names. Level designer from Tangiers, Tangiers, I think is how it's pronounced. I don't know. An immersive sim that's been in development for like I don't know, like 7 years. Still looking forward to this game. Another from Peripitia, which I think everyone mispronounces. Again, I'm so sorry. And finally, I'm actually like looking through the list right now. Finally, someone from I know there was a fourth one. Shoot, I am so sorry. Oh, of course. You interviewed him on your podcast. The developer of Gloomwood, Dylan. He was also part of the panel. So like, but the list goes on from there. I was recently made aware of a game, and like I swear I was gonna play it last weekend, but I was too tired. A Control Alt Ego, which looks like a fantastic new take on the genre. There's also like a spiritual successor to Underworld and Arx Fatalis called Monomyth. There's so many games that are coming out that like has say like, hey, we are self-described immersive sims. These are the values that we profess to like be part of our gameplay. We're part of this lineage. I actually haven't played it, but Harvey talked about it during the panel. I think it's called Cruelty Squad. If I got that right. If I got
Hmm.
that right.
You do.
There's so many now, and so I and like, even Arcane is starting to say, let's change up the formula. Let's not just recreate the same game over and over again. So we're gonna do Deathloop, which is like a different spin on immersive sims. And Arcane Austin is doing Redfall, which is a different spin on immersive sims. And then many of the folks who worked at Arkane for years. Like the founder of Arkane, Raphael, he started off his new studio called, I want to say Wolf Eye, Wolf something, but they're making Weird West. Like again, they're like saying, "Hey, this is our take on an immersive sim," and I feel like the more variety we get in this genre is so much better than what this genre has received for decades, which was like it's going to be a sequel to System Shock, it's going to be a sequel to Thief, or it's going to be a sequel to Deus Ex, and everything other than that isn't an immersive sim, and I that didn't make me happy. Like, is Bioshock an immersive sim? I think the only person who can truly answer that is A, the developer, and B, a fan of those games. If you say that this game is an immersive sim to you, then yes, that's valid. That's totally correct for you. But the more games that we have that are saying this is inspired by these immersive sims, we're making our own immersive sim with this twist, and it's different and it's new and it is like changing up the formula, the better this, like, it's not a genre, it's like a school of design. The better it gets, the better it gets for everyone.
So thank you. I like that you phrased it as how you encapsulate it as it's kind of more like a school of design, because that makes perfect, like that makes sense in thinking about it, because you know it's kind of like the roguelike versus the roguelite debate. um or if you want to go to, I think it's the Berlin Convention of what rogue is, which I recently learned about it. Anyway, I
Mhm.
think it's similar to that, where you can be highly specific on what makes an immersive sim if you want to try and drill down onto it. But then that
Yeah.
kind of closes the gate on other games that arguably, like, and I don't mean any offense by this, I'm just meaning as like a generalization, for someone like Deathloop, some could argue because of its somewhat roguelike or roguelite elements. I hope I don't
Yeah.
offend you by saying somewhat. But like some would argue that that doesn't allow it to be an immersive sim, or
Mhm.
or a roguelike, or because of, the other aspects of it and all of this stuff, right?
Yeah.
So, I
Meanwhile, like, we're coming at it from a totally different direction, which is due to the multiplayer restrictions on data, like how much data can we transmit between players? We're going to have to cut down on all these physical interactions. Does the lack of all these physical interactions mean we're no longer an immersive sim?
yeah,
And like we like the developer is seeing this totally differently from the player.
exactly. And that's why I really like the way you encapsulate that. It's
Mm,
a school of thought or a school of design, as opposed to, this one hard set, you
right.
need X, Y, and Z, which is fantastic. And, I'm thank you for everything you said about it. It was very nice to hear your perspective, because, I myself, I didn't get into immersive sims until Deus Ex. Um, I tried playing Thief before it. I was too young. That's the short and long of it. And I was just never able to get back into it.
Mm,
But Deus Ex was the first one that fully grabbed me, that I absolutely fell in love with. And I FPS RPG is what they were at the time, and as someone else previously had mentioned as well. So it's like it wasn't really. It was hard to try and find more games like Deus Ex. Um,
yeah.
you kind of just went with like a Morrowind or Oblivion, or the Elder Scrolls games kind of thing,
Hmm.
because that was it. It was the closest analog.
Yeah.
And I really enjoy the genre now from what I've seen of it. I've the handful of them that have come out from Arkane, Lyon and Austin. I've loved all of them. I thought they were fantastic. And needless to say, what I'm trying to say is I'm hooked on immersive sims, like as a genre umbrella. So I'm
Mhm.
happy that the future looks bright from where you're standing, because you're in a much better place to um, say, kind of see what they are. So I'm happy to hear that, because I'm looking forward to more of them, as I'm sure many other people are. And much similar to like the boomer shooter boom that we
Yes.
had. um I'm I'm looking forward to, that kind of resurgence. Now,
Mm.
I only want to touch on this real quick. And if
Yep.
you try and explore Cruelty Squad, um, I'm going to say you're as hard as it is, you're gonna have to give it more than a day because as anyone who has tried Cruelty Squad or has looked at Cruelty Squad, it is just noise. And when you first try and play it, that's just a whole lot of sometimes just disgusting noise. But once you get used to that noise and once you can see things in
Mm.
it all makes perfect sense. It all translates to your brain despite the fact that you were looking at weird, sometimes disgusting textures and everything else. Like oversized, stretchy, whatever, you name it.
Yes.
But if you try Cruelty Squad, I will just say give it more than a day. Just give it a day or two to see if your brain can actually read what it is. Because after that, you will have a you'll have a very weird and wild experience because
Mm.
there's no other way to try and say the game. It's weird and wild, and it's
Mm.
in my mind it's worth it if you can get past the what in the name of God am I looking at right now moment.
This matches up with what almost everyone else who has played it has told me about it. So I believe you.
That makes me feel good to know that
Mm.
I'm on that same one. I'm always worried that when I try and pitch this game or say this game to someone that I'm going to be the odd man out that just didn't understand for a while. Oh man. Anyway, Dana, as I was saying, I want to let you
Yeah,
get back to your evening. I do thank you for your time. However,
my pleasure.
as I said before, if there was anything else you want to discuss, another cool game, something you feel more people should be aware of, the floor is yours. As well, please let everyone know where they can find more information about you, which I'll also be including in the episode description.
Favorite trend over the last few years. I love games that are like 90 minutes to 3 hours long. I want more short games. That's it.
Is
That's
isn't
my mic drop. That's my mic drop. Give us more short games. I want a very compact. I want to be able to sit down on a Saturday afternoon and just play a game from start to finish and be like, okay, that's it. That was incredible.
is isn't that such a weird feeling to have? Like, and when I was younger, and I imagine when you were younger too, you were like, this game has to last me all summer, and if it doesn't, it's
Of
horrible.
course. Of course.
And
Well,
then,
back then, you're gonna play like maybe 4 games tops through the entire year. They have to last a long time.
yeah,
But
exactly.
but now it's like, okay, I wanna experience a new game, and I want to experience it from start to finish right now.
Yeah,
And I've had so many great experiences with games that like have that uh length. So please make shorter games.
exactly. Like just as a brief to your mic drop, um, when I was younger, I really enjoyed the Super Nintendo game Aladdin,
Mhm,
and I would rent that game and I would struggle with it all weekend or
mhm,
all whatever, and then it would go back and I never would beat it. I always got stuck on like the same part, and then I eventually got
mhm,
past it. Blah blah blah.
mhm.
And then now when I pick up that game, it's like a 90-minute game, and I'm happy with that. I am happy
Mhm.
that I can be in and out of that game in less than 2 hours, get
Yeah.
my enjoyment out of it. So, I agree,
Mhm.
it's we need more short games, just more nice short games. Let it happen, right? Just let it
Yes.
happen.
Yes. This really cool. It's like Journey and Limbo. Those are my examples of this. Like I want to spend a couple hours in an afternoon and have an experience I never forget. So there you go. Journey, not Limbo, sorry. Inside. That's what I'm thinking of. It's from the same developer. Uh, Limbo takes longer because Limbo is really hard. Inside isn't as difficult. That one you can finish in an afternoon.
That's good to know. I've beaten Limbo, so
Mhm.
I was gonna say that one I don't remember being an
Mm.
hour or too long, but it's
Oh,
been a
that
while.
one is so hard. Yeah, Inside is that's the I It's probably a little longer than 3 hours, but it's definitely a game you can finish in one go.
Which is, like, yeah, like you said, which is just fantastic and easy, an easy
Mm-hmm.
thing to do and enjoy on your day off, right?
Mm-hmm. Totally. Instead of binge watching a show, play a video game.
Or if you're like some people, just do both and get the worst of both worlds. Nothing like having your attention split between two things crappily, right?
People need to do what's best for their own minds.
Yes, that wasn't meant to be a shot, by the way. I do that all the time. I'm not
Yeah.
gonna lie. It's I do that all the time, so it's just one of those things where you're like, oh crap, what just happened in either of these things? Oh crap, I have to rewind or restart a mission or whatever.
Mhm.
But again, Dana, not that I'm trying to say I don't enjoy your time. I have been. This has been a fantastic conversation. Um, was there any other topics you would like to discuss, or maybe lightning round through before I let you go?
Oh, I think I hit all the bases.
Okay.
Yeah, pretty sure I've covered everything.
All right, fantastic. Like I said, this isn't saying I'm not enjoying my time with you. I'm just incredibly worried that I'm stealing too much or more of your time.
Don't worry about it. I'm gonna watch Andor and then I'm gonna go to bed and it would be a great evening.
I sincerely hope that you can enjoy the rest of your evening with Andor and
Oh
then
yeah.
bed before the day tomorrow.
Every episode's been fantastic. I can't get enough of it.
That's good to know. I haven't started it yet, so I have vague
Oh, it's
ideas of
great.
it or
Yeah.
notions, but
You
I'm
you don't
happy to hear that.
I think you don't even have to like or care about Star Wars. It's just a good show. It's just good TV.
That's even better to know. I can probably
Mhm.
sell it to my girlfriend then a little easier because she cares nothing for Star Wars. So,
I think it might
um,
help if you don't. Like honestly, I think people who don't care about Star Wars probably enjoy it more.
sounds to me like I have an easy sell. So thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah. It's good.
But other than your praise of Andor, was there anything else you wanted more people to be aware of today?
No, just love what you do. Um, I mean, I could like give another shout out for, the struggle of transgender people is real. I think things are worse than you think. So please, don't ignore, don't ignore that thing. It's, think things are tough. So I try to stay positive. I make my video games. I play my games. I enjoy my entertainment, but the reality is harsh. So please also give that consideration.
Definitely, and I'm not from a position where I can say too much on that, as I am a cis dude or whatever the phrasing is. But no, I completely understand. I have people in my life that have transitioned or in the process of transitioning or what have you. So I'm not trying to say I understand. I'm just saying from my knowledge,
Yeah.
from just reading about things, I hope for the best for you and for everyone, because it's trans rights are human rights or
Yes. Thank
however the
you.
phrase needs to be. I'm sorry,
No,
I struggle
that's
with it, but
perfect. I'm lucky to be in France where things for now are fine, but in like the US and the UK and in other countries, things are definitely not fine. So that's my little shout out to like real world issues there.
and by all means, I hope you didn't feel that I was pressuring you into trying to make a shout out for that. That was just
Mm-mm.
but I yes, I wish
Yeah.
you and anyone else that would be affected. The uh, luck feels like a dirty way to say it, so I apologize for just saying the best of luck.
Oh, I understand what you mean, and thank you.
Uh, sorry, I don't know how to segue from there. But anyway, as I said numerous times before, um, I'm going to let you go, get on with your evening, enjoy Andor
Yes.
and what have you. But please let everyone know where they can find more information about you, which I'll also include in the episode description.
Yeah, my main, pretty much my only social media is Twitter. We'll see how long that lasts. Um, and I am at Dana E Knight, Night.
All right, so thank you, Dan. I will definitely include that in the episode description. And if there wasn't anything else, I'll let you get off your evening.
Oh, that's it. We're good to go. This was
Awesome.
fun.
Well, I'm so happy that you had fun. I'm not the one that ruined podcasts for you. I can
No,
say.
not at all. I might have ruined podcasts for you. I know I can be pretty long-winded.
I you know I've this is no secret. I'm pretty certain I have said this on
Mm.
record or on an episode before, but I've said it numerous times after. But I am kind of like the dog going to the dog park.
Oh.
I'm just happy to get to talk to someone and have a conversation. So it's always fun. I'm always appreciative of people's time, but more importantly, I'm always happy to just kind of be here, like the dog at the dog park.
I understand. Thank you.
So thanks again, Dana, for making time to have this conversation with me, and thank you for joining us on the Red Tunic
Welcome.
podcast. As well as a special thanks to Ronald Jenkins for the use of the music from the title track from Road Steep. And if you like this podcast and want to support it and help it grow, please subscribe or follow me on Twitter at Red Tunic Podcast to receive the latest episodes and news, and be sure to share it with those you think might also enjoy it. Thanks until next time.